verse 8, if Jesus had given them that rest, if Jesus had fulfilled the promise 2,000 years ago, there would be no future. And if he had done it, he would not have said that there is yet a day coming. So it's no use us looking back and saying that we're living in a whole new period because Jesus has come and ushered in the kingdom. He's ushered in the kingdom, but we have not yet entered. It's a future that comes, hopefully it's not going to be long, because we are now almost 6,000 years since creation. 2,000 from creation to the flood, 2,000 from the flood to the time of Jesus, 2,000 years from the time of Jesus to the present day. So, in verse 9, there still remains a promise to be fulfilled. And this was something which my father was very strong in teaching me, and I don't find this really in teaching in the church, thank God for my father, because he's pointing out that salvation is not yet complete. Don't think that what you've got down here is the full answer. It's not. It's in part. The real whole thing that we're looking and waiting for is the kingdom. And when Jesus is preaching, I study this because I obviously studied the life of Jesus as an evangelist because he's the best evangelist. But the whole point is this, that Jesus spoke more about the coming kingdom, the millennial reign, the 1,000 years reign, than he did about salvation. So, verse 10, he that is entered into his rest has ceased from his own work, as God did from his. Verse 11, let us labor, let us work, therefore, to enable us to enter into that rest, lest any man fall. Now, this is a big warning. It's possible that we can fall short of the glory of God. This chapter is a very difficult one in that it is allowing for the fact that not everyone, even in the church and the believers, will finally enter. Well, Jesus gave a very simple of that, the parable of the 5 wise and the 5 foolish virgins. Out of the 10 virgins, only 5 went in. So he's saying, let us labor to enter, lest we fall because of unbelief. Do you know, you can't get away from this, can you? Belief and unbelief. For verse 12, the word of God is quick and powerful, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing it to divide it asunder soul and spirit, joints and marrow, and is a discerner of the thoughts and intents of the heart. So that even if we supposedly are part of the church, it does not mean that we, simply because we're part of a church, enter into full salvation. Because God is going to bring us to judgment and discerns the thoughts and motives of our hearts. And in verse 13, neither is any creature that is not manifest in his sight. So in other words, godly and ungodly, we all come before judgment. That's what it's meaning here. There's nobody, no creature that is not recorded in God's sight, in God's book, in God's heaven. All things are naked, opened to the eyes of him that we have to deal with. We have to deal with God, God's judgment, and there's more than one judgment. There's the judgment of ungodly, there's even the judgment of the righteous, on which is based our rewards. God knows the thoughts and motives of our lives, and we are to be judged. Jesus refers to it in the parable of the talents, how those with 5 talents, 10 talents, and so on, used them and multiplied them. The one with the 1 talent buried it in the ground, and everything that he had was taken away. That is servants given talents. And if we liken that in our spiritual experience, the talents are the gifts that God has given us, and the judgment is how we use what God's given us. You get the reward, whether you've got 5 talents, 10 talents, you still get the reward, rulers over cities. But if you've got 1 and you bury it in the ground, you don't use it, you lose what you had, because that one is taken away and given to the one with the 10. Then he comes on to a new thing in verse 14. Seeing then that we have a great high priest that is passed into the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast our profession. Verse 15 explains what he's trying to say. He says, we don't have a high priest, which is just a holy man set apart from us, who can't be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but our priest was in all points tempted, like as we are, yet without sin. So in other words, the high priest, Jesus, had to come and live here for 33 years, face the same problems, the same temptations, the same weaknesses, yet without sin. And therefore, he is sympathetic to us, because he says, verse 16, let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace in time of need. God is aware of our frailties, our weaknesses, and our difficulties. And in the next chapter, which I shall deal with next time, he goes on to deal with the responsibility of the high priest, the earthly one. But here, what he's saying is this: the real high priest is Jesus. But he's not just aloof. He lived with us, faced the problems with us, faced the temptations, therefore understands the problems that we have. We're not perfect. I'm not perfect. There are several sins. You know, I was brought up with the fact that there are sins of commission, sins that you commit. There are sins of omission, things that you... Paul says, the things that I should do, I do not. And the things that I should not do, I do. And so where is an understanding of this? Because Jesus lived here, knows the life, knows everything about what we're going through. That is why he's able to be a high priest, because he understands us. Oh, what a challenge this is, but it comes back down to having the simple faith to accept the truth, the promise of the Word of God. If we don't accept by faith, we are condemned, like Israel, to wander in the wilderness. Only if we accept by faith did we go into that kingdom. Oh, you need to do what I do and ask God for faith to believe all his promises. And more on this next time. God bless you.